Hi, boys and girls. It's Crazy Hair Day, and as you noticed earlier, Mrs. Stewart has her hair like a rainbow, and it's quite crazy. In fact, I think it's getting a little crazier as the day goes along. Well, we talked a little bit about rainbows the other day, and I'd like to learn some more about rainbows today. Do you remember the two things that need to be present outside in order for you to see a rainbow? Do you remember? If you said sunlight and rain, kiss your brain. Awesome job, yeah. Well, the book I'd like to share with you today is called Curious George Discovers the Rainbow. And at the end of this book, Curious George has some really cool science experiments for us to try. So in my next video, we're going to do a really neat rainbow science experiment. So make sure you look for that. But let's go ahead and read Curious George Discovers the Rainbow. George was a good little monkey and always very curious. Sometimes curiosity gets a good little monkey lost in the woods, especially when he's chasing leprechauns. We were doing that last week, huh? Would you believe that that's how George discovered the rainbow? And it all started on a bright, sunny day. So I see a picture of George, and then it looks like they have a photo of what it would really look like outside if there was a rainbow. I don't know if you can see the picture of the rainbow very well. Let's turn the page and find out how George discovers a rainbow. It was a beautiful day in the country. Steve and Betsy were visiting from the city for the first time. George couldn't wait for their outdoor adventure to begin, but first they had to unpack. When Betsy dropped her books, George rushed over to help pick them up. That's when he saw something he had never seen before. Something amazing. Check out what he saw in her book. Do you see? It's a leprechaun and a rainbow. That's a rainbow, George, said Betsy. See the pot of gold at the end? And the leprechaun? Rainbows are always the same 7 colors. Can you say those colors with us? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Yeah. Rainbows are created by the sun and rain, Betsy explained. But I can make a rainbow without water. You want to see? A rainbow inside? George could hardly wait. Betsy used some scissors to cut a slit in the center of a sheet of paper. And then she taped the paper over a flashlight and shined the light through a fishbowl full of water. Do you see what she's doing? I wonder how she's going to make a rainbow. The flashlight is like a sunbeam, and the water in the fishbowl is like a giant raindrop. The light shines right through the water, and behold, Betsy said proudly, a rainbow. Oh, she did make a rainbow. How cool is that? I wonder if you had a flashlight and a fishbowl at your house, if you could make a rainbow. George thought Betsy's rainbow was nice, but there was no leprechaun and there was no pot of gold. George wondered if he would ever see a real rainbow that spanned the whole sky. Have you? He looked out the window. White, fluffy clouds floated by. It looks like a nice day, said the man with the yellow hat. Meanwhile, the man helped Steve prepare for a hike. Have you ever seen any wild animals? Steve asked. Oh, we've got skunks and deer. I've seen even a moose or two, the man replied. A moose, Steve said. Now there's something you don't see in the city. So it looks like they're packing up and getting ready for a little hike in nature. That's a great idea. At last, it was time for their hike. Outside, the sun was shining, but the temperature was cooler, and there were more clouds rolling in. I'm driving into town to get some food for dinner, said the man in the yellow hat. But just then, thunder grumbled low in the distance. Oh, if it rains, head home, he added. George knows the way. George led them into the forest. I'm not leaving without a picture of a moose, Steve said. Just then he felt a little raindrop. Oh no, not rain. Do we have to go back already? I don't think so, Betsy said. It's probably going to stop soon. Look, the sun is already starting to peek through the clouds. Even if it's just drizzling a little bit outside, doesn't necessarily mean you have to go inside. But if it starts to pour, then you'll want to head inside. Sunlight and rain at the same time? Could this be George's lucky day? Sure enough, when he turned around, there was a huge, colorful rainbow arcing across the sky. His wish had come true. "That's the biggest rainbow I've ever seen," said Betsy. George was excited to have found a rainbow, but he couldn't see the pot of gold from here. Steve was excited too. "I'm climbing this tree to take a picture of the rainbow," he said, scampering high into the branches. I hope he's careful while he's climbing up in that tree. George needed a better view too. He knew if he was going to find the pot of gold or see a leprechaun, he needed to get closer. So what do you think he did? George ran off in search of the rainbow's end, with Charky close behind. Charky is their little puppy. Do you see him down here at the bottom? "Charky, George, wait!" Betsy yelled, chasing them through the rain. When Betsy finally caught up with them, George tried to explain that he wanted to reach the pot of gold, but no matter how far or fast he and Charky ran, the rainbow only got farther away. Do you remember in class we talked about the end of the rainbow? Why can you never get to the end of the rainbow? Do you remember? Let's see if George finds out. "The leprechaun with a pot of gold is just a fairy tale," said Betsy. "Well, maybe. But I guess it couldn't hurt to look, just in case." But Steve was nowhere in sight. "He'll catch up with us," said Betsy. "Let's keep going." Do you think Steve is maybe looking for a moose? They hadn't got far when something small and green hopped through the bushes. Could it be the leprechaun they were searching for? George thought he must be getting close to the pot of gold now. So there they are, tromping through the woods, looking for the end of the rainbow. But it was only a green frog that they had heard. Usually George would be happy to meet a frog, but it was no leprechaun. George wasn't disappointed for long, though, because the frog led him to a second rainbow. Look, there's a rainbow in the water. How cool is that? "Sorry, George," Betsy said. "That's not another rainbow. It's only the reflection of the rainbow on the water. How will we keep chasing the rainbow now? We need to cross the river." Have you ever seen the reflection of a rainbow in the water? Just then, Charky darted through the bushes after the frog and found what they needed most, a boat. "Uh-oh," Betsy said as they floated away. "How will Steve ever catch up with us now?" Remember, Steve's nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Steve realized that he was all alone. Oh, there he is. He probably should have never wandered off, huh? All by himself. "Charky, Betsy, George, where are you?" he called. Suddenly, something moved in the bushes. What do you think it was? "A moose!" Steve shouted, snapping a picture. But the moose didn't like Steve's loud voice or his camera. Steve was scared. He was about to call for help when he heard a voice. "Back away from the moose slowly," the voice said. It was George's friend, Bill. He knew a lot about the wilderness. "And whatever you do, don't frighten the moose," Bill added. The moose walked off into the forest. When the coast was clear, Bill introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Bill, and you're lucky I found you. Moose can actually be quite dangerous." "Hey, I'm Steve," he said to Bill. "Since you're so good at finding things, maybe you could help me find my sister and our friend George." "Oh, I know George," Bill said. "Follow me. I saw his friend in town. He'll help us." Well, I'm glad that somebody found Steve, and now he's got some help to get back home. "Steve," said the man, "where are Betsy, Charky, and George?" "Oh, we got separated in the woods," Steve said. "I don't know where they went." Just then, something sparkly caught his eye. It was more rainbows. "Oh, yeah," Steve remembered. "Now I know. George saw a rainbow right before they ran off." "If I know George, I bet he went to find the gold at the end of the rainbow. I have an idea. I think we can help get him home," said the man in the yellow hat. Do you see these rainbows? How cool is that? I wonder what the man in the yellow hat's idea is to get George home. Are you making a prediction right now? I see that there are some little gems with rainbows shining. When George, Betsy, and Sharky reached the shore, daylight was fading, and so was the rainbow. Remember, George, Betsy, and Sharky are still out searching for the end of the rainbow. George knew they needed to get home before dark, and there was only one problem, though. He didn't know where they were anymore. Suddenly, Sharky began to bark. Ruff, ruff! Something was glowing from the end of the rainbow. It must be their pot of gold. George, Betsy, and Sharky raced toward the light. So here's the rainbow, and they're seeing this glow at the end of the rainbow. Wonder what that is. George, over here, called the man with the yellow balloon. He was standing on the roof of their house, holding a bright, shiny balloon that was wearing a very familiar yellow hat. George was happy to be home with his friends. There was no pot of gold, but he knew he had found the real treasure at the end of the rainbow. Oh, look. So the man in the yellow hat thought to put a balloon up in the air, and that sunlight was bouncing off and giving a little extra light. Oh, and now George is safe at home with the man in the yellow hat. I thought maybe they were going to use those little gems to somehow get George to come home. And here's the very end of the story, where George has some really cool science experiments that we can do. So we're going to give these a try in our next video. But I'm so glad that George got to see a rainbow. He found out that the best treasure of all was having the man in the yellow hat, and for him to be back home safe and sound. They never did find the end of the rainbow. Do you remember what we talked about in the classroom? That a rainbow actually goes around. And so there really is no end to a rainbow. Yeah, it looks like it ends, but it doesn't. Well, stick with me for our next video where we're going to make a rainbow experiment. Okay, bye friends.